So thank you very much. And I think just to set the expectation and the format right, so we will have a dialogue with the 4 panelists, and then we will request Shafkat Saab to really sum it up in terms of what their views are around this one. So while we are talking about the demand-driven education and the diversity within the workforce, I think we are bound to have 4 mega themes which are out there. The opportunity and challenges around the demographics, age population and the youth bulge in a different part of the world. Technology is definitely an enabler there. We are going to talk about the individual choices which people may have, like the freelance phenomena, whenever they want to work, how they want to work, whom they want to work for, and definitely a productivity gains which businesses might be looking around the world. So when we are talking about the workforce in today's world, we are talking about the workforce, global workforce pool. So everybody has access to develop a global workforce pool, and they can access the talent from that pool at the same time. So thank you, Shafkat Sir, for setting out the context. I think the relevance of education to the employment or entrepreneurship, the standardization of it, and the rigor and the governance around the certification, which can bring the confidence. I think this is a very, very important area, and that's where we would like to see some of the comments from the panelists. So Shahid sir, I'll start with you. And while we are talking about the demand, the most important thing here is what type of business model we will see in future, and what does it mean for us?
Hello. Thank you. I think before we move in, I'd like to take the opportunity, because Shafkat Saab is here, and what he's said, just to put the context so that we can have more of a productive discussion. When we hear our learned speaker earlier with supercharge, we must understand that the world is moving at a speed where everything becomes obsolete in 12 to 18 months. To keep pace with 12 to 18 months, you've got to take the perspective of what is the average age of Pakistan. The average age of Pakistan is 23. In this day and age, when science and technology is moving the way it is, we hope to live at least 73. So we're looking at a workforce that has to address the next 50 years with a technology pace of 12 months. That, to me, sir, I think is the biggest challenge that we have in the education in the, and how do we part with people, as before me, the learned speaker said, that what can we give back to the society and what can we give back to the youth? Setting that precedence, we have another set of issues. The world is moving at 1 billion people every 12 years, and we are not only moving 1 billion people every 12 years, we've already depleted the resources to about 60%. So playing against nature and culture of how things are moving around us and keeping that self-centered to being ethically correct, I think is the future challenge in education and what you will be parting to people. Talking about Pakistan, I think the biggest opportunity we have and the responsibility we have as the elders today sitting in this august house is that we have a generation that will have the youth bulge for about another 40 years. And then we will be going in that same curve. So the people that we produce have to be cutting edge, have to be utilizing technology, have to be understanding what the world will be needing. And the studies that we've done, I've been a part of this study myself, in 2050, out of the 7 billion people who will be out there looking for employment, only 4 billion will have jobs, 1 billion will be employed, 3 billion will be self-employed. So that sort of sets the stage for my fellow colleagues to sort of start the discussion.
Thank you, Shahid Sahib. So, pace of change, definitely, that's one of our opportunity and the challenge. But the most important number you just brought out, that out of the 4 billion, 3 billion will be self-employed. And when we talk about the self-employed, so coming to you, Taha, what type of competency we will be looking at, given the type of business model which are very technology driven and the pace which we are talking about the change. So how we will keep up even if as a self-employed with that changing world?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The mic works, right? Right. So I think I'll tell you a bit about. I am Tahir Malik. I am the head of Asia, Middle East, Africa in Reckitt Benckiser, a company which was called Reckitt and Coleman. It's an old company. I handle about 60 countries, and I've just moved to this role. Before this, I was handling Latin America. A part of my job is, as I go and tour these countries and visit fantastic talent from across the globe, we try to identify what separates, as we call it, winners from not so winners. I think I want to share with you a few thoughts that I've experienced in the last many years in RB. But I want to start my thoughts with two brutal facts. Fact number one: this world is a global village. My head of Japan is an Indian. My head of Indonesia is an Arab. My head of Southeast Asia is an Argentinian. My head of Middle East is a Britisher. My head of South Africa is a Spanish. And you sum it all up, it's a truly multinational culture. I think that's the first part. I think we've got to look at this world as one big global village where the best of the best exceed. And I think that allows us to widen the horizon. Number two, human resource allocation is done not on cost, but on value addition. In my last role, I was moved to LATAM, based out of Brazil. It was far more expensive for the company to move a Pakistani to head a region, bring his shipment, bring his dogs, bring his cats, bring his family, get him a school, versus bringing a local talent in, because the companies make allocations based on value addition. So I think these are the two facts which are very important and we should consider as we move forward. A lot of times people ask me, what will it take for us to become a CEO of Reckitt Benckiser or CEO of Pakistan or CEO of Middle East? And I would share with you what I've shared with them, a few thoughts. The first one is what we call the core competency. If you're a pilot, if you don't know how to fly a plane, I think you shouldn't be in the job. So that itself on a global platform is given. But often enough, we don't focus a lot on what we call the tertiary softer skills, which are very important at all levels. And I think that's what sets apart, let's say, the winners versus water walkers. The first one, and I'll just 5 of them, is an absolute commitment and passion to the job. People who don't like flying should not be a pilot, otherwise they will not love the job. I think one thing we've seen in RB, and we've seen a lot of these companies, is that the hard element, the commitment, the passion, allows you to go the extra mile, and that sets apart. It's very important to go the extra mile. Number 2, towering strength. In our company, when we move talent, we ask them, what's your towering strength? What do you stand for? And I think that's also very important as we go through different levels of personal education. I think we've got to stand for something. In my company, I'm the only Pakistani who's a member of the executive committee, and I'm known as the Pakistani who can sort things out. And now I tell them to add a proud Pakistani who can make things happen. And that's why now they've brought me into Middle East, Africa, and Asia. Number 3, and I think that's, and just 5, is courage. I think courage to take risks, courage to take personal risks, courage to get out of your comfort zone, courage to take your management head on and tell them no when you believe in something. I think that's also a very important leadership skill that we've seen allow people to excel. Goes without saying, communication. I think Pakistanis generally are good at it, but I think in the global arena, in a room, typically the Americans stand out because they speak loud, they're confident, they come across as they know everything. And I think that's what sometimes we say is the gold standard. Yes, English is their mother tongue. That's okay, but I think that's how communication skills, being able to cut the point through, is also important. Last but not the least, I would say agility. How moldable are you? A lot of times in our company, we've sent the best talent to some of these far-flung places like Mexico, like Colombia, like Argentina, and they cannot survive because the environment is too hostile. And I think that's also a very important thing, which is how agile we are to get out of our comfort zone and go beyond Middle East. A lot of Pakistanis, if you ask them, what do you want to do? I want to go to Dubai. It's closer to home. I think also our ability to get out of our comfort zones and hone and polish our leadership skills is key. To sum it all up, I think one thing which is very important is what we call the moral compass. Always doing the right thing, always standing up for what's right, and not doing these shortcuts. So I think these are some of the thoughts that I want to share with the panel, which have worked for us as a company, which worked for me and as a leader of this business.
Now, thank you, Tahir. And I think Tahir touched upon on a two very, very important thing. Number one, the core competency, and we will talk about what type of core competency further, but the core competency has to be there. You can't really live with the soft skills without having a core competency, and that basically evaluated through the moral compass. I cannot represent myself as someone which I am not. And that moral compass, like we strongly believe, technology is a one disruptor, but ethics is going to be the bigger one. So because it's just a multiplier effect if we are not ethical. I think I'll bring it to Gule Mariam, the question. You talked about the soft skill, and Gule Mariam is very much working in a rural economy right now. Yes. So we are talking about people who have altogether a different type of social background. So if the key skills and competency we are talking about is on a softer side, so how we can integrate that rural economy with the urban, and then most importantly with the global economy. So what are the key things we should be more aware of, and what we should be doing around that?
Okay, thank you, Sajid. I've been working in the rural sector, like in District Tukara. I've been working for the past more than a decade. And what I've learned that 60% of our people of Pakistan are living in the rural areas of Pakistan. So we really need to study, and we really need to look at the education system over there. And when I set up my schools, my first English medium school that I set up, it's a non-profit school. It was in 2006. When I started off, I realized when I started that there was a lot of potential. People want to learn. People want to send their children to school. But to correlate the two things, workforce and education, what education should lead to opportunity. We have to correlate the two. So the competency that we are talking about right now in today's time and age, now things are changing. As we are listening to so many learned speakers since yesterday, that automation, digitalization, this newest technology, this all is a lot of awareness and a lot of education that needs to be imparted to all parts of Pakistan, including the rural areas. What we need to do is, in my opinion, is that we need to have one national curriculum as spoken by Shafkat Saab, the minister, and we need to actually engage and collaborate and connect urban schools with rural schools. We need to really reach out to people there. There's a lot of potential. I can share one of my stories. One of my students from a rural school, he took a Microsoft exam. Now I can share this story because we had a school there. The boy was given an opportunity, and since there was no, science lab or computer lab there, this kid had an opportunity. He was sitting in the computer lab. He started, experimenting. He took this Microsoft exam. He excelled, and now when he's on a scholarship, he's studying abroad. So this one kid, if one life can be touched, can you imagine the opportunities that are there? So it's individual drive, it's individual's choice, what he wants to do with his life. Again, I'll come to the leadership part also. It's individual traits and what the government is doing to facilitate, to help all these people. I don't want to give the figures like it's all, a Google search away, but we are a population of 200 million people, and out of us, 23 million students are out of school, which is a daunting figure. Considering that 5 to 16 years of children, 23 million of them are out of school, and we are ranking second in the world of having out of school children. And having a population of 60% in the rural areas, we really need to work towards education in both. I'm not saying urban doesn't need, but rural too. Now, connecting it with workforce, how do we correlate? How do we connect? When we do educate them, how do we bring them back to the workforce? How do we employ them? That's the part that needs more attention now in today's time and age, with all these speakers talking. And you see, there are people who are willing to learn. We need to bring that technology back to the areas. People are willing to learn. If we bring that to them, we have to do our part. The industry we have to bring the skills. It has to be, if it's if it's going to be vocational training, we have to train them. If it has to be, because there's a lot of skill-based training going on also in our areas, and I think the core competencies that we were talking about, it should be skills, because in agro-based economies, we have people we might need in agro-economy. We need vocational trainers there who should be willing to help them out right after school, right after colleges, which again is going to be one of our propositions to the Honorable Minister, that after class 8, we should make it compulsory that instead of just having arts and sciences, we should also have an option for people to have a skill training. Like it should be arts, sciences, or skill training, so that whoever wants to have a skill training, they should have an option, and then they should be connected to the workforce. And connecting it to the IT, whoever wants to be, the industry, that sort of connection should be also made. There's career counseling that goes on in schools here. We should maybe have some schools or career counseling teams that should come to rural schools also, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Gulimarim. I think that's a clear evidence when we are talking about the Microsoft certification, and that's leading to a different type of career. That's where the lives is changed. So that standardization of and the rigor and governance around the education and the early stage one. So you really painted the right one that on the early stage. And Shahid, I would like to come back to you, and then I'm coming to you. We have got 3 categories which we are dealing in terms of the workforce. The early stage, which we are preparing right now, and the people who are just ready for the workforce. But there's another one which are already in the workforce. So when we are talking about the core competency and that rapid changes, what would be 3 or 4 core competencies we should be looking at which can enable people to stay relevant over 50 years, like Shahid Sab you mentioned?
The core competence may not be the run-of-the-mill, if you ask me. One of the things that the future would want to see is imagination. It's complex problem solving. These are the 2 core things that people would want. And then language skills. Let me share with you some numbers that I was dumbfounded when I came across them. And sir, we Pakistanis also have to understand that we have to work at least twice as hard as what we're working right now. And when I say that with statistical proof. In China, a student who goes to school for his 12 years of education is spending approximately 2,090 hours a year. In Pakistan, we're spending 1,056. I was asked this question, maybe we can teach better, things are different. I said, no. Try and understand one thing that the Chinese have achieved, and they're showing it to the world, and we must respect that. It is hard work. If you cannot work hard enough, and that kid, it's ingrained in his DNA. And when I looked at the numbers, an Indian kid goes to school for over 1,400 hours, a Japanese kid does the same, and so does an Israeli kid. These are the races who are really producing results. I'm not saying the others are not. But these are people who are working very hard. And this very hard working with the understanding of what technology will offer us to re-equip ourselves with all the domain knowledge base that will be floated out there because of how storage is doubling every 12 months. That's the future. We have to keep pushing ourselves in that direction. Then only will we succeed.
I think very interestingly, the one thing which is coming up is the hard work side of it. And we had a journal, believe in Pakistan, we are a very hardworking nation, which if you just go with the schooling and the numbers we are talking about, so we might have to go back and reimagine creatively that are we or we aren't. But I think it's bring me to the other side. Now, this is the workforce which is coming out. And I would like to really discuss, there's a workforce which is already out there. So if we are talking about, again, the pace, how they can continue, like Tahir mentioned, it's a value addition game. It's not the head count, what value you are bringing to the table. So what existing workforce should do to stay, again, the term which we use is relevant in this changing world and for many years to come.
If I can say something before anything else, when I've listened to Bernie sharing about the supercharge, I had goosebumps. I don't know how many of you guys had really sitting there and saying, wow, the world is changing at a pace that is compounding year over year over year. And the span of education that we're looking at, that we're going to be like spending next 3, 4, 5 years learning something, by the time we learn it, it's going to be obsolete. And if I can say one thing to every one of you, what won't be obsolete, and it's something that has defined my life, has transformed my life, as a guy that was born in Dushanbe, Tajikistan, during war zone, during persecution, during difficult times, you know, it was the transformation of mind. You know what won't be replaced by AI, what won't be replaced by all the fourth industrial revolution, and what can put and transform this country? And what's actually what you shared is entrepreneurship. You know, but what won't change is leadership, it's mindset, it's belief in yourself, it's belief and being resourceful, not just looking for resources, because resources, you know, are going to be always scarce, right? The dreams that you might have and imagining, you know, what you said, we need to learn to imagine. We need to believe that it's there, that you can do it, that I can do it, and it's going to be at the end of the day worth it to pursue it with all your heart and create that tremendous burning desire inside of you, inside of the leadership of your country, inside of, you know, every single organization to come together as one collective to transform your country. That I can tell you, as a young entrepreneur who transformed my life and been blessed over the last 40 years, over the last 12 years, you know, experienced that. I'm so excited when I'm here in Pakistan and and see the talent pool that this country has. And the thing is, you know, I think as an entrepreneur, you know, or someone that wants to take advantage of the opportunities that the future will create, is for you to learn how to recognize problems, for you to learn how to learn. That's a skill that will be so necessary because the world is changing so fast. And if you plan to take a long time to learn a new skill, you know, you might be outdated by the things that are happening here over the next 5 to 10 years. And I believe at the same time that if you develop that agility, as it was said, and you develop that hunger and you develop the ability to learn and recognize problems, and you know, the minister, you were saying before that you might be a PhD and not find a job. The reason you don't find a job, because maybe you lack self-esteem, personal development, you know, leadership skills. Maybe you just lack the ability to identify problems in your country. Let me ask you this. Do you guys think there's a lot of challenges that this country has? Who solves problems and challenges in countries? Are people that have learned to become leaders, that have learned to understand that in every problem there's a seed of opportunity. And if these people here that are super talented, amazingly brilliant and intelligent, you know, if we teach that force, whether you're existing, whether you're young, whether you're just starting out, you know, to be resourceful and identify those problems, you can help exponentially drive transformation for this beautiful country. And what never will go out of style is your work on yourself and your work on your family, on your work. Because not every great entrepreneur finished college. Not every great entrepreneur finished 5 or 10 grades and has a PhD. But every great entrepreneur had a winning mindset, and they said, I'll do it, I believe in me. And they create an environment of that. And if you as a nation create that environment of expectancy, where you say, hey, we will drive that mindset of winning. We will drive that mindset of go break, go do it, go try it, don't be afraid. And you create communities around it through incubators and other things. It's entrepreneurs. This, you know, and we live in a world, and that's my last final thing, is of micropreneurship, right? Where, you know, today you don't have to be a genius and go too much and learn too much. All you have to do is just have that burning desire, identify those problems, you know, identify opportunities that are created through platforms like Uber, Airbnb, you know, some kind of other sharing economies where you can learn and serve the world, where the world is now your playground, right? You take the responsibility to learn English. You take the responsibility to learn communication skills, connecting, value, how to value people. How do you develop values yourself that cross countries will be always the same, of integrity, honesty, love, caring, sharing, and then you become a universal player, and your world is be a playground, and then you can win and your country can win.
Thank you, Evan. And I think interestingly, if you figure out that the competencies and the demand which we are looking at right now and the people are talking about, it's problem solving, it's how to learn, winning mindset, I love that one, hard work, moral compass, self-esteem, and the confidence. So now we have to go back and review our curriculum, that what we are doing with the early learner and we are with the higher education. But most importantly, industry is there. What we are doing in our businesses to really deploy this type of things which are in demand for your own business to create a better experiences for our customer and societies. But Evan, you touched upon one thing is the community, right? The community side of it, the integration of different cultures and diversity. And while we are talking about the global village, like you mentioned, and you are also talking about the connectivity and rural and urban and global workforce integration, where we see the diversity and how we can really build that one where the people can really accommodate each other and the difference of opinions. So where in that education system this tolerance should come out?
Thank you. This is actually something that is really close to my heart, this topic. I would really want to talk about this in front of this international audience also. There's a lot of hype in the media, and sometimes what we read and what we see is not actually true about women in Pakistan. Some things are true and some are not. And we have a lot of the area that I'm working in, and I can speak for a lot of other women also. When I started working, I found a lot of leadership qualities in women there. I found literacy rate you will be amazed, like the teachers that I found, they were they were literate, they were masters, they were graduates, and they were just sitting at home waiting for an opportunity to come up and to be employed. So this is something that I wanted to share, that the region doesn't matter. We have accomplished people, we have women around who are working, we have women in politics, we have women as pilots, we have women in Air Force and different areas, and so in education also. So the leadership qualities are what Evan was talking about. It doesn't matter what gender you are. You walk into a room and you can be a leader. You can just believe that you are a leader. Those traits are in you, and those qualities can be learned. And the diversity that we are talking about, the diversity is in our country. Our country, the topography, the terrain is such that we have mountains, plateaus, we are blessed with Arabian Sea, we have plains, so we have the diversities in our topography too. And in that way, we have a diversity. We have 4 provinces, and all 4 have different sort of regional languages and different beautiful, their own sort of different dress codes and sort of small cultures in them, and we are united by one flag also. So having that diversity, we are trying to have one national mindset or one national curriculum. One national mindset, one national curriculum, so that we all think alike, we all study one curriculum from playgroup to class 8. This is what the vision of the Prime Minister and the Honorable Minister is also, and that's where we are going towards. One nation, one mindset, one framework of curriculum, keeping the diversity in mind, keeping in mind that we are diverse in our own beautiful way, but at the same time we are united. And of course, in that way, we are going to keep this part also, that we are the digitalization part, the automation. There's so many new things that are coming up. The hologram, the AI part, and so we are going to keep everything like that in mind also when we devise that. And I think I'll give that to Shafqat Saab, maybe?
Shahid.
Shahid Saab, sorry.
Shahid, we are talking about, I think she picked up very good in terms of we are talking about the early learner and where we have to really develop that tolerance and the diversity where they can integrate in a different culture. You worked with across the globe with the multiple people, and you also witnessed how this current workforce, which is right now deployed, is working. So what they can do to make sure they can understand and survive in a very, very diverse environment, whether we are talking about the culture, gender, social mobility, whatever area we talk about, and they can live with, like we were talking earlier, 42 nationality working on a one floor, and they are working towards a one goal. So what does it take to really bring that type of mindset which help us to create that diversity?
Let me answer this in 2 steps. One is, when you have the right moral compass, everybody will rotate around you and everybody would want to work with you. If people find you from whichever background, whichever culture you come from, that your moral compass is not right, they will start staying away from you. Having said that, if you look at the top global companies on all the exchanges in the world, we see that oil has lost its charm, and now everybody talks about data as the new gold and data being the new oil. When we talk about data, one of the most beautiful things about data and technology assisting you in it is that it does not lie. There is a digital footprint that you have to follow. So I think if Pakistan is to progress, all the work that is being done by the present government, and I think this government can, sir, with your presence, I'm using this as a message. What we can achieve is how we have oxygen to live. I call it the O3. It's having open government, open data, with open access to it. If we can provide these 3 things to our future generations, the next 50 years for them to work on this, and through this openness, find solutions to all the problems that humanity faces, we can share them with the world, and we will excel. We are the 5th largest nation in the world, and we have enough data-producing kids. We just need to have the right infrastructure, may it be 5G and the electrical power. We can do it, and I think we have the potential, and we are poised for doing it because of our background and understanding languages and how we position with superpowers. When we say China, India, even the Persian, Iran, these are people who have lived life, who know and understand things. And we, at 350 billion, in a neighborhood of $1 trillion boys, have all the way to grow. And that's the potential of Pakistan.
Thank you, Shahid. And Evan, very briefly, you're working with the diverse cultures and the workforce. So what's your 2 cents which you want to share with the people, how that diverse workforce really contribute towards that? And then we will come to the next question. Who is really responsible to create that demand-driven education, whether it's government, business, individuals, or it's educators? So prepare for that one. And Ivan, just very briefly.
What was the question?
The diversity. When you work with a very diverse workforce and you build them and you make them work together. So what does it mean for the organization to have a very, very diverse workforce with this different social backgrounds as well as with the different gender balances as well?
Well, I can tell you this. One of the languages that each one of us speak in a diverse background is love, right? We understand when somebody values us, when somebody cares for us, when somebody, sees in us somebody as another person that I love and care and I want to enable. And that's been, for me personally, the greatest weapon to enable, because I've been through different nations, through different cultures, and to develop that element of caring, empowering, of leadership inside an organization. Because what true leadership does, right, is humility, it's not ego, right? True leadership is acceptance, not segregation and separation. True leadership is about finding allowing others to be more than talented than yourself and be okay with it, allowing others to go a step ahead, have them inspire you to grow. And I think when you have a diversity where, again, we live in a world where the world is our playground, right? It doesn't matter. You can be a woman here and be driving and inspiring through your social media, through videos, other women around the world. And it's for you to become kind of a general soldier with values. And that's what connects. And the talents and other things, you can learn them. And I think that that's core foundation to make diversity inside of organizations work.
Now, thank you, everyone. It's love, care, emotion, connecting with people, and it's okay if somebody is more competent as compared to you. You have to be okay with it in terms of when somebody is growing, somebody is successful. So we have to be okay. We should appreciate that. Now, bringing to the question, the core question. When we are talking about the ecosystem of really going towards the demand-driven education and diversity within the workforce, where that primary responsibility lies, whether it's a government, it's business, it's educator, or it's an individual themselves, who should be the primary responsible for that? Starting with the Gulimari, if you can comment on that, and then we will come to Shahid, Tahir, and then we will come to you.
I think firstly, it's the individual himself, because it has to be the individual. He has to make the decision for himself. Even if you bring education down to the door, and if a person decides not to, he has to be the deciding factor. He has to see, like he or she, he has to see that what he wants to be in life, what's his purpose in life, and then comes the responsibility of course, he should have the opportunity to learn what he has to, and that learning should be relating, that should be a pathway to his employment and his future plans. So I think it's the responsibility of the individual to be first self-awareness, knowing what his skills and competencies are, what he's capable of, and then finally, it's the responsibility, excuse me, of the state to provide the basic education, and there should be career counseling, there should be actual guidelines, and the industries should also reach out and look for the right kind of talent, provide skill development and trainings also, actually guide the individuals like what should be done, and so that they make a very learned choice. Youth these days are also like, they're a little confused at a certain stage. They don't know like what they want to do. So they need a lot of guidance from parents and from peers also. So I think basically, in my opinion, there's a few levels. First, it's the individual himself who needs to decide what he wants to do. Then the government, and then the industry. All three, they all have to play a part in actually deciding that. Thank you.
Thank you, Gulimarim. Shahid sir.
In my humble opinion, I think the government is got to be the enabler. The way things move and at the pace they're moving, I don't think we should expect that the bureaucracy would be able to move at that same pace. I think what the government used to be focused on is primarily being the enabler to allow such things to flourish in a transparent, merit-based system. If that is their primary focus and they go into anticipatory governance mode with foresight of what the next 15 to 20 years will look like, and then bring about the enablers, I think we've hit home.
So if I understand correctly, we are talking about the public-private partnership where the government can provide a framework if we go for this type of, yep, okay. So Tahir, any comment on that, and Evan, then we will seek some comments from Shafkat Saab that what type of things we have.
No, I think I'll add a bit of a different perspective, which is before we get into who needs to do what, let's crystallize what needs to be done. And I'll take you through my top three, which I've crystallized. I think the first one is, I think we as a nation have to raise the bar at the top. We do have good institutions, IB, LUMS, Akhai, GK. Are they clearly at the international level? Are they competing with the Harvards of this world? Why don't we think global? And I think that's the first one. We have great places, we have great institutions. Can we further raise the bar to put them at par with the best of the best? And I think that can be done. That's the first one. Second, bridging the gap between the best and the rest. I think there's a huge divide. You can count on your fingertips the best institutes, and beyond them, I think there's a huge gap. How do we then put a framework to raise the bar beyond these top? And number three, I think the Honorable Minister talked about this a little while ago, which is how do we fix the grassroots level fundamentals, evolve from a three-tier system, madrasa, metric, O-levels, into a one-tier system that subscribes to a basic standard. And I think last but not the least, skill-based education. I think even still there would be people who would not go to a school. They would end up being carpenters, plumbers. can we make them professional carpenters, plumbers, and I think that should sum it all up. I want to finish on Jack Ma's quote, which is, if it's not you, then who? If it's not now, then when? So I think at the end of the day, the responsibility lies on the individual. We have the head of Australia is a Pakistani whose father was a rickshaw driver in Bakkar. And I can take you through his journey of the 22 years ago, where I think this guy came to IBA, came to a multinational, has gone through all the zigzags, and is a fantastic entrepreneur. So I think that's a great example. If it's not him, then who? And I think
Thank
that's
you,
inspirational. Yeah.
Evan.
Well, I think education and growth always comes down to a responsibility of itself, because no matter how much opportunity you can give to one, no matter how much education you can give to one, no matter how amazing of a country you can send someone, in the greatest colleges, in the greatest countries that have everything, there's people that are blaming, that are making excuses, that are saying this is not working, the educational system is failing. And in the same countries, there are people that are taking 100% ownership and they're winning big. So I think, you know, what the foundation is, that between the private sector, between the government, and between the individual, that there has to be a personal standard that has to be set. The change happens when we raise our standard. That's the only way. When we, you know, when somebody gets up and he has to say, I gotta work out in the gym, you know, and that's my goal, that I work out 3 times in the gym. There's people, for them, working out in the gym like brushing your teeth and taking a shower. That's their standard, right? And it's, as a government, when you create that standard where you say, look, we're no longer a nation that will accept that. We're no longer individuals that will, you know, just walk by, but we're taking that responsibility. You know, as a father, you take the responsibility for your family. As a boss and the founder of a company, you create an environment of growth, environment where you enable people. As a government, you empower your ministers, you empower your organizations, you create environments, and then collectively, all three, when they play together, and there's a common vision and common inspiration and common mission, that you unite all of them and say, let's do it. Let's do this push where we as a nation go from step 1 to step 2. And it's not about a giant step, but let's just move forward so that we see progress and celebrate that. That's when change will come. And it comes from, you know, every instant taking 100% responsibility.
Now, thank you. I think here what I would like to do, I'll just summarize that what we have heard here, and then we will request Shafkat Saab to really comment on that side as well. The one thing, when we are talking about the demand-driven, I think the one thing which stands out is that the skill and the mindset we are looking at, we are talking about the problem solving as a competency, we are talking about winning mindset as one of our area, hard work came out very strongly, moral compass, self-esteem, and above all this, because of a changing world, that learn how to learn, so you always stay relevant, and there's a technology part which really enables that. And the another part is the community. We have to become a part of the community, and we have to really embrace that diversity which might exist within the school, colleges, workforce, and we have to encourage that, and we have to really leverage that diversity and the difference of opinion. We should be okay to live with the difference of opinions as well. And from the enablement perspective, I think there's a very interesting debate whether the government has to really come out and create an enabling environment, or it's the individual who has to take that responsibility and come forward and really change themselves and really become relevant and really deliver value in terms of the society, in terms of the family, but in terms of the economic sense as well. But I think it's a very interesting blend, because if we are talking about a very early stage learner, I think like someone in a rural side, the government has to play their role as an enabler. The people who have got more resources and privileges, that I think primary responsibility comes back, particularly the adult side and the people who are already part of the workforce, that they have to take a responsibility. But the government, like Shahid mentioned, becoming an enabler, creating a framework which can really foresee that what type of results we want to take, and the public-private partnership again become a part of that agenda, that how we can really drive and enable that demand-driven education, and then we can really come to that diverse workforce. So I would like to thank my panelists, and I will request Shafkat Saab, specifically when we were talking about the curriculum and the certification and standardization, I think the things which we discussed from a workforce perspective, it's more towards the softer side and the mindsets and the ability apart from the regular skill side of it. So how do you really ensure that if I'm certified and there's a rigor that's really delivered that problem solving and the winning mindset at the same time? So how you will deal with these areas within the curriculum and how your government is going to take it forward?
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think let me begin by complimenting all the panelists for their contributions. And I think we've all benefited greatly from their views. In fact, Tahir Malik Saab said something quoting Jack Ma, which reminded me of the slogan that we used to use in the last election. And it's in Urdu, but ab nahi to kab or hum nahi to kaun. So I think that is, time will tell whether this slogan was right or not, but I think we are well on the way of achieving what we want to. Anyway, I think the one word that I found most important in our discussion was government as an enabler. Because enabler means that you analyze the situation, and after analyzing the situation, you decide the course of action, the policy, the framework, the implementation mechanism. And most importantly, you ask yourself a question. Is this the thing that we should do ourselves and pay for? Is this the thing that we should pay for but not do ourselves? And thirdly, is this the thing that we should neither pay for nor do? So we have to, while we're looking at government as an enabler, we ask these questions. And I think in this broad rubric, there are many things that we should be doing, there are many things we should not be doing, and there are many things that we should be outsourcing. But one of the things that we are doing, and I think this has given me an opportunity to talk about, is the kind of curriculum that we are developing right now. What we are looking at is a number of obviously different curriculums, but also outcomes. What kind of outcomes do we want? What kind of people we want us to be? What's our view of what education should be achieving? So apart from standards at different courses and so on, there is this whole idea of what kind of a citizen do we need? What kind of tolerance we need to breed within our education system. So it's all these larger areas also that concern us. So we are, inshallah, going to move forward on that, and we are going to hopefully create a curriculum which would be not only as at par with any curriculum in the world, but also able to produce the kind of citizens that we want this country to produce. The other thing that struck me about the discussion was the statistic that 3 billion people will be self-employed. And in that context, we have started doing something which I think is very important, which is that we are strongly encouraging incubators and startups in our various universities. And if we have more and more incubators, and we are now planning to enlarge this whole concept, so that young people who are at the university level should be looking at innovations and niches where they can create business opportunities, they can create, so many of them have come up with apps which are actually globally being studied and recognized, or any kind of idea. So I think innovations and new ideas is something that the government is encouraging, and we hope that most of our universities would have incubators and opportunities, and also resources. We are also allocating certain number of resources for the startups, because it's not enough to have a great idea, but then you don't have the money to implement it. So we are also looking at the possibility of having resources for new startups. I don't think I need to add much more. I already spoke in the beginning, so All I can say is that clearly some of the things mentioned like passion, towering strength, courage, community, all these are very, very important. We can spend hours discussing each one of them, but clearly at the end of the day, we have to, as a government, make sure that we create the right kind of environment where, as the old Chinese would say, 100 flowers can bloom. Thank you very much.
Thank you.